I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating on him, but here I am, writing this down because I can't keep it bottled up anymore. My name's Jake, and I was married to Lisa for about 6 years. We had a decent life, or at least I thought we did. She was the kind of woman who always made herself seem busy, always had some excuse for why she wasn't around or why she'd be late. At first, I thought it was just her being flaky, but things started to change. She became more distant, more irritable, and suddenly she was never really available when I needed her. It was around the time she got involved in this new project at work, something about accelerated photosynthesis and plant growth chambers. Honestly, I didn't pay much attention at first. She was one of those people who like to keep her work life separate from her personal life, and I figured she was just caught up in some scientific mumbo-jumbo nobody outside that world cares about. But then little things started to bother me. She was always on her phone, sneaking away to the garage or the basement. I'd catch her lying about where she was going, and her stories never quite added up. One night I was home early from work, something I never do, and I decided to check her phone just to see if she was hiding anything. I know that's not exactly healthy, but I was desperate to understand what was going on. I found texts that didn't make sense, flirty messages with the technician who handled the plant chambers, a guy named Mark. It was after hours, and they'd clearly been chatting a lot. The messages were casual at first, like, "Can't wait to see you again," and "The plants look good, but I think I look better winking face." Then it turned more explicit. That was the first shock, but I kept digging. What really knocked me out was the logs from her work on the plant chambers. I looked up the maintenance records because I was curious about her recent absences. It turned out that every time I was on duty, when I was out in the field helping with carbon sequestration, she was scheduled for maintenance visits. Coincidence? I don't think so. The plant growth chambers are high-tech and they record every visit, every adjustment, every tweak. And those logs, they showed synchronized visits with Mark. It was like they were meeting in those chambers behind my back while I was out doing what I thought was good work. It's crazy to think that the plants, our tiny engineered ecosystem, witnessed what I couldn't see. Those chambers have sensors, cameras even, but I never thought they'd be part of this. I start to realize just how much I missed because I was so caught up in my own routines. I had trusted Lisa completely, and for what? To find out she'd been lying, cheating, sneaking around with someone I'd never even suspected. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak, and honestly, that's only grown since I uncovered all this. I don't know how I'm supposed to pretend everything's fine anymore, especially when I see her coming home late, sneering at me like I'm the one in the wrong. And the worst part, she's so damn good at lying. When I confronted her about the texts and the logs, she just looked at me with that bitchy smirk and started spinning her usual bullshit. Said I was paranoid, that Mark was just a coworker helping her with the chambers, that I was imagining things, that I was overreacting because I'm insecure. She even had the nerve to say I was jealous because I was so wrapped up in my work. Yeah, right. She's trying to gaslight me, but I see right through her now. This isn't just some innocent affair. It's a betrayal that runs so much deeper than I ever thought possible. Her excuses only made me more furious. She lied so smoothly, so convincingly, like it was nothing to her. The way she looked at me when she was lying, like I was some idiot to believe her. But I wasn't born yesterday, and I know when I've been played. I can't help but feel this deep, gnawing ache inside, this feeling that I should have seen it coming, should have known she was capable of this. Instead, I was blind, caught up in our life, thinking she was the one person I could trust with everything. Turns out I was more alone than I thought. I don't even know what to do anymore. Do I confront her again? Do I throw her out? Do I just pack my bags in? Pretend I never saw anything? Every time I think about it, my stomach knots up and I want to scream, but I don't. I just sit here trying to process how this whole thing unraveled so fast, how I was so stupid to believe it was all perfect. I keep asking myself, how could she do this? With Mark, no less. Someone who's supposed to be helping her with plant growth chamber maintenance, not screwing her behind my back. I guess I'll have to face her again tomorrow. But right now, I'm just trying to breathe and figure out what the hell to do next. I never imagined my life would come to this. I thought I knew her, thought I knew us. Turns out I didn't know anything. The next morning was worse than I expected. I woke up feeling like I'd been run over by a truck, my mind racing through all the things I'd uncovered last night. I kept replaying the texts, the logs, her sneering face when I confronted her. How could she lie so effortlessly? It's like she's practiced at it, this perfect mask that she wears when she's trying to convince me she's innocent. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew the truth, and the truth hurt. I stayed in bed for a while trying to decide what to do. My stomach was tight and my head was pounding from the weight of it all. I kept asking myself, should I just confront her again? Or should I gather more evidence? I didn't trust her to tell me the truth, not anymore. The thing is, I wasn't even angry at Mark at first. I was angry at her for lying, for sneaking around behind my back, for treating us like we were some game she could play. And that anger grew with each passing minute. Finally, I got up, knowing I couldn't just sit here anymore, pretending everything was fine. I needed to see her face to face and get some answers. I made coffee, quiet and bitter, and waited until she came home from work. When she finally walked through the door, I saw her sneer again, like she was already expecting me to be mad, or worse, forgiving. She tossed her bag on the counter and looked at me with that annoying, bitchy smirk. I could feel my fists tighten but kept my voice steady. So, Lisa, I said, trying to keep my tone even. We need to talk. I found the logs, the texts. Everything points to you and Mark sneaking around in the plant chambers while I was out helping to save the environment. Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly recovered, blinking like I was some idiot who didn't understand what was really going on. She crossed her arms and looked at me like I was the one in the wrong. Jake, she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. You're overthinking again. Mark is just my coworker. We talk about the plants, the chambers, the project, that's all. I don't know what you're imagining, but you're just paranoid. That's her usual defense, the one she's used 1,000 times before. It's like she thinks I'm stupid enough to buy her bullshit. I didn't let her get away with it. I told her I knew she'd been lying, that I had proof of her secret visits in the middle of the night when I was working in the field. I told her I saw the logs, the synchronized visits when I was supposed to be helping with the carbon sequestration. I said I knew she'd been cheating on me with Mark and I wanted her to admit it. Her face twisted into that bitchy smirk again, like she thought she could just manipulate her way out of it. Look, Jake, she said, voice sharp. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I don't know what you want me to say. Yeah, I've been working late. Yeah, I've been meeting Mark, but it's nothing more than work. You're just jealous because I spend more time with the plants than I do with you. You're insecure and you're imagining things. I don't owe you an explanation for that. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She's so good at lying, so convincing. Like she's practiced her whole life. I wanted to scream, but I held it in. I looked at her, my mind swirling. I felt a mixture of betrayal, anger, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. We built this life together, and now it all felt like it was crumbling just because she couldn't keep her legs closed or her lies straight. I realized I was more hurt than angry at Mark, at least for now. It was Lisa I was pissed at for being so selfish, so careless with what little we had left. I thought about the trust I gave her, how I never doubted her, and now I see it was all a lie. She started to get defensive, throwing out more excuses, saying I was paranoid, that I was projecting her actions onto her because I was insecure or jealous. It was like she thought she could just brush this off and everything would go back to normal. But I knew better now. I knew she was lying, and I knew this wasn't just about some late nights with Mark. It was about her betraying everything we had built, everything I believed in. I told her I wasn't planning to forgive her anytime soon, that I needed space to process what I'd discovered. I felt the tears prick my eyes, but I fought them back. I couldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me, how far she'd fallen from the woman I thought I married. I told her that I'd be staying at my brother's place for a while, that we needed time apart. She rolled her eyes, snapping at me, saying I was overreacting, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill, that I was being unreasonable. But I didn't care anymore. I knew the truth, and that was enough to shatter everything. I never thought I'd be the guy to end a marriage over cheating, especially involving some high-tech plant chambers, but she proved me wrong. Sometimes, The betrayal cuts so deep that you realize just how fragile the whole thing was. As I packed a bag and left her standing there, I felt a strange sense of numbness mixed with clarity. I'd lost her, but maybe I'd also gained some sense of who I was supposed to be. Still, it hurt like hell, and I knew it was only the beginning of a long, painful road ahead. I didn't sleep much that night. Too much swirling in my head, images of her sneering, the texts, the logs, the betrayal. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her smirk, the way she lied so effortlessly. I kept thinking about the damn plant chambers, how they had recorded her visits, her meetings with Mark in those sterile, cold environments. It was like those chambers became witnesses to her infidelity, and I wasn't even aware of it until now. It was surreal, like something out of a bad sci-fi movie, but it was real and it was happening to me. In the morning, I packed some essentials, clothes, a few things from the house I couldn't bear to leave behind. I didn't want to stay in that place a second longer than I had to. I told my boss I'd be taking some personal time, and I drove straight to my brother's place. My brother's name is Mike. We're close, and he's been through his own share of heartbreak, so I figured he'd understand. When I finally got there, I didn't even bother hiding how torn up I was. I just collapsed on the couch, exhausted, angry, hurt. Mike looked at me with concern, asked what was wrong. I told him everything about the texts, the logs, her dismissiveness. I told him I'd caught her cheating on me and that she'd been lying about everything. At first, he just listened, nodding slowly, then he said something I didn't expect. He told me I deserved better, that I shouldn't let her walk all over me, that I should think about what I wanted, what I needed to do to move on. It was good advice, I guess, but it didn't change the fact that I felt like a complete idiot. Over the next few days, I kept replaying everything in my mind. I started to realize that I'd been blind for a long time. Lisa was always so bitchy, so demanding, like she thought the world owed her something. But underneath it all, I saw her for what she truly was: manipulative, selfish, and a liar. I couldn't believe I'd been so stupid to ignore the signs, to dismiss her sneaking around as just work stress or some temporary phase. Now I was paying the price. What's worse is that I kept thinking about the plant chambers and how they recorded everything. It's like they became unwitting witnesses to her secret life. That thought kept gnawing at me, how the technology we built to help us breathe better, to help save the environment, had become part of her clandestine affair. It was such a sick twist. Those chambers, which were supposed to be symbols of hope, witnessed her betrayal. I wondered how many times she'd been in there with Mark, whispering, touching, sneaking around. It made me sick just thinking about it. In those first few days, I also started to question myself. Did I miss the signs? Could I have done something to stop her? I kept telling myself I wasn't perfect, but I also knew I'd been faithful, committed. I never gave her any reason to doubt me. And yet she still cheated, still lied. I felt so betrayed, not just by her, but by everything I believed in, by the idea that I was enough for her, that I was the one she loved. I kept busy trying to ignore the ache, but it was always there. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I did wrong. Was I not enough? Did I miss the signs? How did she manage to hide all of this from me for so long? I wanted to scream, but I just clenched my fists and kept it inside. I knew I needed to figure out what to do next, but the path forward wasn't clear. All I knew is that I couldn't stay with her. Not after what I found out. Not after her lies and deception. One thing I did realize, despite the pain and anger, I couldn't let her see me break. I had to stay strong, at least for a little while. I owed it to myself. She might have been the one to cheat, but I was the one who was going to decide what comes next. I didn't want to be some broken man, waiting for her to come back and apologize. No. I needed to take control of this mess before it tore me apart completely. I started drafting plans to get some answers. I needed proof, more evidence if I could get it. I wanted to know just how deep her betrayal went. Was Mark just a fling, or was there something more? Were there other guys? I didn't want to just walk away blindly. I wanted to see everything, understand how she thought she could get away with this. I had to be careful, too. Lisa was manipulative, and I knew she'd try to spin things her way if I confronted her again without solid proof. While I was sitting there, mulling everything over, I remembered the plant chamber logs again. That's when I decided. If I was going to do this right, I'd need to see those logs in detail, find out exactly when she was in there, and with whom. I needed to know if Mark was just one in a string of guys, or if she'd been cheating on me with others. I had to get to the bottom of it, no matter how ugly it got. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this betrayal wasn't just about her lying. This was about the fact that she had been living a double life, sneaking behind my back, all while I was out trying to help the planet breathe better. I didn't sleep that night either. Instead, I stayed up, searching through every bit of digital evidence I could find, trying to connect the dots. And the more I looked, the more I saw how calculated she'd been. She lied to my face about everything, and I was furious at myself for not noticing sooner. It was a wake-up call, a brutal lesson in trust and betrayal. I knew I'd never see her the same way again, and that realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. But I also knew one thing: I couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend this had never happened. I had to face the fact that my marriage was over, at least for now, and I'd have to find a way to pick up the pieces, to move forward from all this mess. It was going to be a long, hard road, but I had no choice. I had to do it for myself, for whatever dignity I could salvage, and maybe, someday, for a chance at real happiness again. The days that followed were like living in a fog. I kept replaying everything: the betrayal, her sneering face, the logs, the texts. It was like I'd uncovered a secret world she'd been hiding right under my nose. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her in the chambers with Mark, whispering, touching, doing whatever they did while I was working in the field. It sickened me to think how she used those chambers as a cover, how those high-tech sensors became silent witnesses to her lies. I spent hours poring over the plant chamber logs, trying to piece together the timeline. Turns out, she'd been sneaking into those chambers during my shifts, probably more than I even realized. Sometimes I'd see the schedules and her name would be there, marked with her code, like she was going in under the guise of maintenance or research, but in reality, she was meeting Mark. The logs showed synchronized visits in the dead of night when I was miles away helping the environment. It was clear she'd planned this, carefully orchestrated her secret meetings, and used her work as a shield. I couldn't help but feel a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. How could she betray me like this, using her job, using the plants we helped grow as cover for her betrayal? It seemed so cold, so calculated. I kept asking myself if I had missed any signs. Was I blind or just naive? I thought I knew her, but it turns out I barely knew her at all. She'd been lying, manipulating, hiding her true self behind that bitchy smirk every time I confronted her. I had trusted her with everything, and she'd tossed it all aside for a quick affair with Mark. One night, I decided I needed to see her in person. I couldn't just keep doubting and researching from a distance. I wanted to confront her face to face, to hear her deny it again or finally admit the truth. So I went back to our house late at night. I wanted to catch her off guard, maybe see if she was still sneaking around. I wasn't planning to yell or scream, at least not yet. I just wanted to see her, to look her in the eyes and know exactly what kind of person she had become. When I got home, I crept around the house trying to find her. The house was eerily silent. I checked the basement, the garage, the bedroom, nothing. That's when I remembered the plant chambers. There in the basement, a locked door I'd never paid much attention to before. I used my key and the door swung open with a slight creak. The chamber was cold, sterile, lit by the glow of the monitors showing data and images. And there she was, Lisa, in the chamber with Mark. They didn't notice I was standing there at first. It took a moment for everything to sink in. They were in the middle of something, their bodies pressed close, clothes half off. I don't think I've ever felt such a punch to my gut, seeing her like that, with someone else right there, in our own secret space. It was like a punch to my heart, and I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to scream, to storm in and tear them apart, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, watching them. The timestamp on the monitor confirmed what I already knew. This had been going on for weeks, maybe longer. They looked up when they heard the door creak. Lisa shrieked, trying to cover herself, her face twisting into a mask of anger and contempt. Mark looked stunned, like he hadn't expected me to show up. I felt like I was drowning in a flood of rage, heartbreak, and disbelief all at once. The The scene was so surreal, so twisted. Our own sanctuary turned into her secret rendezvous spot. I remember standing there, feeling my fists clench and unclench. It was like I was outside of myself, watching this happen to me. I wanted to lash out, to destroy everything, but I couldn't. All I could do was look at her, that bitchy smirk still on her face, and realize how much she hated me, how little I meant to her. The betrayal cut so deep, I thought I might faint. I wanted to scream at her that I knew everything, that I saw through her lies, but my voice caught in my throat. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed, her voice cold and sharp. "What are you doing here, Jake?" She spat, trying to act innocent, like I was just some paranoid fool invading her privacy. But I wasn't buying it. I knew. I saw everything. I knew she'd been sneaking around, lying, cheating, using those chambers as her secret hideout. The anger inside me boiled over, but I forced myself to stay calm, for now. I told her I saw her in the logs, that I knew about her meetings with Mark. I told her I'd had enough of her lies. And then I turned around and left, standing there in the cold, feeling the sting of her betrayal. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just walked away, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had become a stranger, a liar, a cheat. And I had to live with that fact. That night, as I sat alone in my brother's apartment, I realized something important. I couldn't go back, not to her, not to that life. I had to start thinking about myself now, about getting out, about healing. Because if I stayed, I'd just be another fool who let himself get played. The truth was out there now, clear as day, and I needed to figure out what my next move was. I knew I couldn't erase what I saw, but I could decide what to do with it. And that decision would shape the rest of my life. The next couple of days were a blur. I kept replaying everything I saw, every detail burned into my mind. The way her face twisted when she saw me, the look in her eyes that was full of contempt and defiance. It was like a switch flipped inside me. I'd always believed that I was the guy who could forgive, who could move past even the worst betrayals, but this was different. It wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was calculated, cold, and deliberate. Every moment she spent in those chambers with Mark felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. I stayed holed up at my brother's place, trying to piece together what I should do next. I knew I couldn't go back to her, not after what I'd seen. The trust was shattered, maybe beyond repair. But how do you rebuild from something like this? My mind kept racing, trying to find a way out, some plan to make her pay, or at least to get justice for myself. I wasn't going to be one of those guys who just walks away quietly. No, I needed something that would hit her where it hurt. That's when I started thinking about the plant chambers again. Those logs, they had everything. Every visit, every meeting, every time she was in there with Mark. It was like a secret diary of her betrayal. I also remembered that Mark was just a technician. He wasn't supposed to be involved in anything personal, but clearly he was. I wondered how many other times she'd been in those chambers with him, for what hours, days. I needed to get more details, more proof. If I could find out exactly how deep this went, I could finally do something about it. So I hacked into the chambers system. It wasn't easy, but I had some background in tech and I knew where to look. I pulled up the detailed logs. They showed her in there at night, in the early mornings, times I'd been told she was working late, or I'd been out in the field. It was like she was planning her affair behind my back, right under my nose. The system even recorded her conversations and some video feeds I'd never seen before. Seeing her in those secret moments made me feel sick, like I'd been betrayed by everything I believed in. I also discovered that Mark had been visiting those chambers for months. The logs showed multiple visits that coincided with her supposed working late nights. Sometimes they even met after hours in the dark, while I was helping plant new ecosystems miles away. I saw footage, snippets of her sneaking into the chamber, her face lit by the glow of the monitors, Mark waiting for her. It was like watching a twisted documentary of my own life. All I could do was stare, trying not to lose my mind. This revelation made the whole thing even worse. It wasn't just a one-time thing or a simple affair. This was planned, methodical, and cold. She'd been living a double life, pretending to be committed to me while sneaking off to meet Mark in our own damn plant chambers. The thought made my stomach turn. It was like the engineered plants and the high-tech environment we created had become her secret playground. I kept asking myself, how long had this been going on? Was it just a fling, or was it something more? I had no idea, but I sure as hell wanted to find out. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I'd be prepared. I couldn't just walk in blind like last time. I needed to make her listen to see the damage she's done. I was tired of her lies, her excuses, her bitchy smirk. I wanted her to face the reality that she'd destroyed everything we built, our relationship, my trust, and the life I thought we shared. And I was going to do it on my terms. That night, I sat down and drafted what I was going to say. I knew she'd lie again, try to manipulate the situation, but I had the proof now. All I had to do was lay it out, clear and simple. I was done being the victim. I was done pretending that everything was okay. I wanted her to see that I knew the truth, that I wasn't going to be played anymore. I was ready to fight for myself, for whatever dignity I had left. I also realized that I couldn't let her continue to manipulate me with her words, her usual lies about work, stress, or just friends. I had the evidence now, and I was going to hold her accountable. I deserved that much. The hurt was still there, heavy and raw, but I refused to let her see me crumble. Not yet. I had to be strategic, cold even, because she was manipulative and she'd try to turn this around if I wasn't careful. Honestly, I don't know what I expected when I finally sat her down again. Part of me hoped she'd finally tell the truth, own up and be sorry. But I knew Lisa. She'd lie, deny, or turn it all around and make it my fault. Still, I had to try. I owed myself that much. I owed it to the man I was before she turned him into someone broken and betrayed. As I prepared to confront her, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd come, how much I'd lost, but also how much I'd gained. This strange clarity that I was finally seeing her for what she truly was. I was done being blind. From now on, I'd do whatever it takes to get out of this mess. And I'd make sure she paid for what she did, one way or another. The confrontation came sooner than I expected, and it was everything I feared and more. I sat her down in that same cold living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. Her bitchy smirk was still there, but I could see the flicker of worry lurking behind her eyes. She knew I had the evidence now, and it rattled her. I laid everything out, logs, videos, texts, everything I'd uncovered in those dark, secret chambers. I watched her face go pale, her usual bravado slipping away as the truth hit her like a freight train. "Lisa," I said, voice steady but icy, "I know about the visits. I know about Mark. I know everything. You've been lying for months, hiding your affair behind those chambers. Do you want to tell me what the hell is really going on?" Her eyes darted, her lips trembled, but she refused to speak for a long moment. Then her voice, when it came, was defensive, dismissive, trying to spin her way out of it. "You're overreacting, Jake. I was just doing my job. Mark is just helping with the plants, and you're jealous because you're never around. You're imagining things like always." That was her go-to. Blame me. Say I'm insecure, make me doubt myself, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I was tired of her lies, tired of her manipulation. I told her that I'd seen the logs, that I knew about her sneaking into the chambers at night with her hands all over Mark. I told her I'd seen the videos, the moments she'd thought no one was watching, and that I was done playing her game. She looked at me, that same bitchy smirk curling on her lips, but I saw the fear in her eyes now. She tried to deny it all, but the truth was staring her in the face. I told her I was leaving her, that I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies, deception, and betrayal. I told her I was done being your fool, done trusting someone who could do this to me. I had made my decision. I was walking away, and she could go to hell if she thought she could manipulate her way out of this one. When I got up to leave, she snapped at me, trying to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining everything, that I was overreacting, that she loved me. All I could do was shake my head. I knew what I saw. I knew what she was and what she'd become. It was heartbreaking, but also a relief. Finally, I was free from the charade. I didn't look back as I walked out that door, knowing I'd taken the first real step toward reclaiming my life. That night I slept alone and finally allowed myself to feel everything, the pain, the anger, the loss. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been blinded for so long, but now I could see clearly. That betrayal had broken me in a way I never thought possible, but it also freed me. I realized I'd been living a lie and I deserved better. I deserved honesty, respect, and someone who would use the tools I helped create, those high-tech chambers that once symbolized hope, as instruments of her deceit. In the days that followed, I started putting myself back together. I filed for divorce, went to therapy, and began to rebuild my confidence. It wasn't easy, and I still feel the ache of loss sometimes, but I refuse to let her ruin me entirely. I learned that trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep, but it's possible to heal if you're willing to confront the truth and face the pain head-on. Now I look back and realize that this experience, terrible as it was, taught me something invaluable. Never ignore the signs, no matter how small. Trust your instincts. And never let anyone, no matter how bitchy, manipulative, or charming, take away your dignity. Lisa's betrayal taught me that sometimes the truth is ugly, but it's also the only way to move forward. I may be scarred, but I'm stronger now, and I know I'll find happiness again. Better, wiser, and more cautious than before.